The Galaxy Council chamber was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of ozone, a place built by beings who thought themselves too advanced for war, too evolved for violence. Around the crescent of polished black stone, alien leaders sat, their faces unreadable. They had gathered for one reason: humanity. At the head of the room, Commander Dane Holt stood alone, the single human allowed inside, arms crossed, a bored expression stamped on his scarred face. He wore no armor, no medals, just a simple black uniform with a single silver star on his collar. The council speaker, an ancient creature with glistening blue skin and 1,000 tiny eyes, shifted uncomfortably. His voice clicked and buzzed through the translator. "Commander Holt, we welcome your presence. We seek peaceful resolutions. The Human Confederation's recent military deployments are concerning. The Council wishes to understand your intentions." Dane didn't blink. His gaze swept across the Council. Soft creatures, all of them. Born in safe worlds, sheltered by centuries of peace agreements and empty promises. They didn't understand men like him. They never would. He stepped forward, the heels of his boots cracking against the polished floor, and placed a thin data tablet on the center podium. "Our response is simple," he said. "You crossed our line. There's no talking this time." A low murmur filled the chamber, nervous, uncertain. The translator bots stuttered, trying to catch up to the bluntness of his words. An insectoid ambassador flared its wings, hissing. "Surely you exaggerate. We sanctioned only economic restrictions." Dane cut him off with a raised hand. "You crippled our colonies, starved our people, cut off our trade routes. You thought we'd beg?" The council speaker leaned forward, the 1,000 tiny eyes blinking in a wave. "Humans have always been emotional. We understand. But a military response would be catastrophic." Dane smiled, a tight, humorless thing. "You think we're scared of catastrophe?" The council whispered among themselves in dozens of tongues, but the meaning was the same. Confusion, fear. Another ambassador, some feathery creature with a long, slender neck, tried a softer approach. "The council offers reparations. We can negotiate terms. There is no need for violence." Dane tapped the tablet. A hologram flickered to life. Battle plans, fleets in motion, troops mobilizing on worlds the Council had never even thought to defend. "This isn't a threat," Dane said. "It's already started." Silence slammed into the chamber like a thunderclap. He watched their faces, the dawning horror, the panic clawing its way into their bones. The insectoid ambassador was the first to break. "You can't be serious. This is madness." Dane shrugged. "Madness is starving a child on Vega Prime because some bloated bureaucrat decided they didn't like our independence. Madness is thinking we'd let it slide." The council speaker clicked furiously, speaking to the other ambassadors in a rapid, high-pitched language. Emergency sessions, military votes, defense codes. Dane waited, letting them scramble, letting the reality sink in. One of them, a lizard-skinned diplomat, hissed at him. "You could have come to us. We would have listened." "We did," Dane said. 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. Every time we sat here and talked, you took more. You bled us dry with your peace." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Now we're done talking." The council speaker rose shakily. "If you proceed, Commander Holt, you will face the unified armies of the Council." Dane leaned in, his eyes cold and steady. "Good. It'll save us the trouble of hunting you down one by one." For a moment, no one spoke. The council chamber, once a place of endless words and negotiations, had become a tomb. Dane straightened, turned on his heel, and walked toward the exit. Just before the massive steel doors hissed open, He paused. "You wanted peace," he said over his shoulder. "We wanted respect. Now you'll get neither." And with that, Commander Holt walked out, leaving panic to fester behind him. The cold steel doors of the Galaxy Council chamber hissed shut behind Dane Holt with a heavy finality. Outside, the air was different, less polished, more tense. The sprawling corridors of the galactic capital buzzed with hurried movement. Council aides with pale faces scrambled past, whispering into communication devices. Security patrols doubled. Shields rose over the central district. They were afraid. Good, Dane thought grimly. It's about damn time. Waiting at the end of the corridor was Captain Jack Mercer, a veteran soldier with close-cropped gray hair and eyes like sharpened steel. No salute, no pretense. Just a curt nod between men who'd seen too much. "How'd they take it?" Mercer asked, voice low. "They're pissing themselves," Dane replied. Exactly as planned. The Galaxy Council chamber was cold, sterile, and smelled faintly of ozone, a place built by beings who thought themselves too advanced for war, too evolved for violence. Around the crescent of polished black stone, alien leaders sat, their faces unreadable. They had gathered for one reason: humanity. At the head of the room, Commander Dane Holt stood alone, the single human allowed inside, arms crossed, a bored expression stamped on his scarred face. He wore no armor, no medals, just a simple black uniform with a single silver star on his collar. The council speaker, an ancient creature with glistening blue skin and 1,000 tiny eyes, shifted uncomfortably. His voice clicked and buzzed through the translator. "Commander Holt, we welcome your presence. We seek peaceful resolutions. The Human Confederation's recent military deployments are concerning. The Council wishes to understand your intentions." Dane didn't blink. His gaze swept across the Council. Soft creatures, all of them. Born in safe worlds, sheltered by centuries of peace agreements and empty promises. They didn't understand men like him. They never would. He stepped forward, the heels of his boots cracking against the polished floor, and placed a thin data tablet on the center podium. "Our response is simple," he said. "You crossed our line. There's no talking this time." A low murmur filled the chamber, nervous, uncertain. The translator bots stuttered, trying to catch up to the bluntness of his words. An insectoid ambassador flared its wings, hissing. "Surely you exaggerate. We sanctioned only economic restrictions." Dane cut him off with a raised hand. "You crippled our colonies, starved our people, cut off our trade routes. You thought we'd beg?" The council speaker leaned forward, the 1,000 tiny eyes blinking in a wave. "Humans have always been emotional. We understand. But a military response would be catastrophic." Dane smiled, a tight, humorless thing. "You think we're scared of catastrophe?" The council whispered among themselves in dozens of tongues, but the meaning was the same. Confusion, fear. Another ambassador, some feathery creature with a long, slender neck, tried a softer approach. "The council offers reparations. We can negotiate terms. There is no need for violence." Dane tapped the tablet. A hologram flickered to life. Battle plans, fleets in motion, troops mobilizing on worlds the Council had never even thought to defend. "This isn't a threat," Dane said. "It's already started." Silence slammed into the chamber like a thunderclap. He watched their faces, the dawning horror, the panic clawing its way into their bones. The insectoid ambassador was the first to break. "You can't be serious. This is madness." Dane shrugged. "Madness is starving a child on Vega Prime because some bloated bureaucrat decided they didn't like our independence. Madness is thinking we'd let it slide." The council speaker clicked furiously, speaking to the other ambassadors in a rapid, high-pitched language. Emergency sessions, military votes, defense codes. Dane waited, letting them scramble, letting the reality sink in. One of them, a lizard-skinned diplomat, hissed at him. "You could have come to us. We would have listened." "We did," Dane said. 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. Every time we sat here and talked, you took more. You bled us dry with your peace." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "Now we're done talking." The council speaker rose shakily. "If you proceed, Commander Holt, you will face the unified armies of the council." Dane leaned in, his eyes cold and steady. "Good. It'll save us the trouble of hunting you down one by one." For a moment, no one spoke. The council chamber, once a place of endless words and negotiations, had become a tomb. Dane straightened, turned on his heel, and walked toward the exit. Just before the massive steel doors hissed open, he paused. "You wanted peace," he said over his shoulder. "We wanted respect. Now you'll get neither." And with that, Commander Holt walked out, leaving panic to fester behind him. The cold steel doors of the Galaxy Council chamber hissed shut behind Dane Holt with a heavy finality. Outside, the air was different, less polished, more tense. The sprawling corridors of the galactic capital buzzed with hurried movement. Council aides with pale faces scrambled past, whispering into communication devices. Security patrols doubled. Shields rose over the central district. They were afraid. "Good," Dane thought grimly. "It's about damn time." Waiting at the end of the corridor was Captain Jack Mercer, a veteran soldier with close-cropped gray hair and eyes like sharpened steel. No salute, no pretense. Just a curt nod between men who'd seen too much. "How'd they take it?" Mercer asked, voice low. "They're pissing themselves," Dane replied. "Exactly as planned." "Planet's secure," Mercer reported. "No serious resistance left. Civilians are cooperating. Scared shitless." Dane nodded. "Good. I want full broadcasts. Let every council world see this. Let them know no place is safe anymore." "They'll call us monsters," Mercer said. "They already do," Dane replied. "Now they'll learn to fear us too." He stared out across the burning city, jaw clenched. "For every child they starved," he said quietly. "For every colony they choked, we repay in kind." Mercer looked at him, eyes hard. "And when they beg for peace?" Dane's voice was ice. "Then we'll remind them. This war isn't about peace." He looked back at the council insignia being torn down by human soldiers. "It's about respect, and they'll bleed until they learn it." In the void of space, the human fleet moved onward, system by system. The council scrambled to form defenses, but it was too little, too late. Their fleets were scattered, their supply lines crippled, their leadership in disarray. Humanity had cast aside diplomacy. Now, they were writing a new language, the language of war, and the galaxy was starting to understand. When humans chose war over words, there was no turning back. The Council's warfleet emerged from hyperspace like a shimmering wall of silver and gold, ancient ships gleaming with ceremonial banners, hulls polished for show, not scarred by battle. In total, nearly 200 ships, dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, the so-called pride of the Council. Commander Dane Holt watched from the Resolute's command bridge as the tactical map updated with enemy contacts. Red icons filled the void. Admiral Grant Keller stood beside him, arms folded. "Finally," he muttered. "They've come out to play." Dane's mouth twitched. "Arrogance in formation. Let's break it." Across the human fleet, now reinforced with battle groups from nearby systems, orders snapped into place. No speeches, no threats. This wasn't a duel. This was an execution. The Council Fleet Commander, an ancient Sevalon admiral named Torak, watched the approaching humans with disdain. "These savages think themselves warriors," Torak hissed to his bridge crew. "They lack discipline. They lack honor." He gestured with a clawed hand. "Forward screen, engage and scatter them. Show them the might of the Council." Hundreds of sleek Council fighters launched from carriers, arcing in elegant spirals toward the oncoming human ships. On paper, the Council's ships outnumbered the human fleet nearly 2-1. But on paper, wars were won by the naive. Aboard the Resolute, Keller gave the word. "Release the wolves." Human fighter squadrons, rugged, angular craft painted black and gunmetal gray, screamed into the void. No decorative spirals, no graceful curves, just brutal speed and heavy guns. The first clash was over in minutes. Council fighters relied on formation, flying, and automated targeting, but human pilots fought dirty. Split-second evasive rolls, decoy bursts, electromagnetic jammers. The Council fighters couldn't adapt. Within 10 minutes, nearly half the forward Council fighter screen was gone. On the command deck of the Council flagship Valiance, Admiral Torak seethed as reports poured in. This is impossible. They have no discipline." A junior officer, trembling, spoke. "Admiral, their tactics are irregular, adaptive. They're learning our moves mid-battle." Torak slammed a claw against the console. "Order the main batteries to open fire. Cut them down." The heavy guns of the Council dreadnoughts roared to life, spitting emerald plasma bolts across the void. But human ships didn't meet them head-on. Instead, smaller corvettes and frigates darted forward, drawing fire, creating gaps. And from those gaps, the heavy human cruisers surged in, railguns locked, missiles streaking. The first Council cruiser, the Starbloom, took 3 kinetic slugs to its central reactor. It split apart in a silent burst of fire. The second, Glorious Dawn, lost its engines to a precision missile barrage. Adrift, it was pounded to dust by plasma fire. On the Resolute's bridge, Dane Holt stood with arms crossed, eyes cold. "Torak is slow," he said. "He's still fighting parade battles." Keller grunted. "That's why we're going to gut him." He leaned toward the helm. "Push hard on the left flank. Force them to rotate. Expose their carriers." The human fleet shifted like a living beast. Heavy ships punching through the left, lighter units harassing the flanks. Council formation began to falter. On the Valiance, alarms shrieked. "Left flank collapsing, Admiral." "Carriers exposed." "Human battleships closing fast." Torak's scaled face twisted in rage. "Counterattack. All ships. Full advance." But it was too late. Human battleships Hammerfall and Relentless speared through the weakened flank, unleashing point-blank barrages. 3 Council carriers went up in flames, spilling wreckage and bodies into space. By the 3rd hour of battle, the Council fleet was in disarray. Admiral Keller watched the unfolding chaos with grim satisfaction. "Now," he said, "send the message." A coded transmission burst from the Resolute. Tight beam straight to the Valiance. The message was simple: run or burn. On the Valiance, Torak stared at the message. His pride screamed at him to fight, to stay, to uphold the Council's honor. But the cold, brutal truth was undeniable. Outgunned, outmaneuvered, outclassed, the Council fleet had no choice. "Signal retreat," Torak rasped. "All ships, jump out." In the void, Council ships began vanishing in streaks of light, running for safer systems. The few that didn't make it were torn apart. When the guns finally fell silent, the human fleet stood victorious. On the Resolute's bridge, Keller allowed himself a rare nod. "Not bad for savages," he muttered. Beside him, Dane Holt's gaze remained cold. "This is only the first blood," he said. "They'll send more." He turned to the comms officer. "Signal all fleet elements, no quarter. We move on the next target immediately." Back in the council chambers, the panic had become full-blown terror. The speaker's 1,000 eyes blinked rapidly as the battle reports streamed in. Fleet destroyed, key ships lost, human fleet advancing unchecked. They don't follow any known rules of engagement," one ambassador stammered. "They refuse ceasefire codes. They ignore surrender channels." "They fight to annihilate," another whispered. "No honor. No restraint." Councillor Jarek slammed a fist on the table. "You fools! You let this happen. You fed them to the point where they had no choice but to become this." On Earth, news of the victory spread like wildfire. In the war room beneath Confederation command, brass and politicians watched the battle footage in grim silence. At the head of the room, President Marcus Vane, a former general himself, stood with arms folded. "They underestimated us," he said flatly. "They thought we'd keep playing their game. Now they're learning what happens when humans stop talking." He turned to his generals. "Prepare for full escalation. We strike at their core worlds next." A murmur rippled through the room. "Sir, no human fleet has ever entered deep council space," one admiral warned. Vane's gaze was ice. "No human fleet has ever tried," he said. "Until now." On the Resolute, Dane Holt stood alone in his quarters, staring at a battered photo. His brother's face looked back, a colonist who died 5 years ago on Vega Prime, starved by council sanctions. Dane traced the edge of the photo with a calloused thumb. "This is for you," he said quietly. He straightened, walked back to the bridge. The war was only beginning, and the galaxy was about to learn. When humans chose war over words, they finished what they started. The stars burned cold beyond the bridge of the Resolute. Commander Dane Holt stood at the main viewport, arms folded, eyes locked on the void ahead. Behind him, Admiral Keller coordinated the fleet's movements. Sharp, clipped orders relayed to every human warship. They had won the first battle, but that wasn't enough. Not anymore. The Council still held its heart worlds, wealthy, decadent planets untouched by war for centuries. That was about to change. "Status?" Dane asked without turning. Keller's voice was grim. "Fleet fully resupplied. Casualties replaced. Strike groups in position. The jump to the inner systems is ready." Dane nodded once. "Good." He turned, facing Keller directly. "No more caution," Dane said flatly. "We hit them where it hurts. Their elites, their politicians, their industries." Keller's eyes gleamed. "Aye, Commander." He looked at the tactical map. Their next target blinked in red. Arrendor Prime. A jewel of the Council, rich beyond measure, arrogant beyond belief. A planet that had openly funded the sanctions that starved human colonies. Dane's jaw tightened. "We burn it to the ground." Arrendor Prime was a world of gleaming spires and endless gardens, orbiting a blue-white star. For generations, its citizens had lived in comfort, untouched by hardship. They viewed humans as uncultured beasts, tools to exploit, not equals to respect. So when the human fleet dropped out of slip space, no alarms had been prepared, no defenses fully manned. The Council believed no one would dare strike so deep. That belief died in fire. Human ships surged in without preamble, no warnings, no ultimatums. Orbital defense platforms were targeted first, railguns and plasma cannons tearing through the ancient, underpowered stations. Council ships scrambled to intercept, but they were luxury cruisers, parade pieces meant to impress diplomats, not fight hardened human warships. Admiral Keller coordinated the assault with brutal efficiency. Phase 1, cripple orbitals. Phase 2, planetary strikes. No delays. In the capital city of Arrendor, Panic spread as the skies lit with fire. Council nobles fled to fortified estates, screaming into private channels for aid. But the Council's fleets were scattered, the Great Pride Fleet still reeling from its defeat. No help was coming. Human dropships pierced the atmosphere, black streaks against the burning heavens. At their head, Captain Jack Mercer, clad in scorched armor, rifle slung across his chest. He briefed his troops in the hold, voice hard. "Objective is simple," Mercer said. "Cripple their industry, demoralize their elite, make every bastard on this rock remember today." No one questioned it. They had seen the colonies starve. They had buried their dead. Now it was time to collect. The first human boots hit the ground at dawn. Mercer's strike teams swept through industrial sectors, planting charges, hacking central grids. Factories ground to a halt. Power failed. Automated systems collapsed. The elite fled in armored convoys, but human strike teams ambushed them on the skyways, tearing through escort drones with ruthless precision. No quarter was given. No prisoners were taken. From orbit, Dane Holt monitored the ground feed. Images streamed across his display. Burning mansions, council ministers dragged from bunkers, broadcast towers seized and forced to relay human warnings. "Let them watch," Dane said coldly. "Let every system see what happens when you starve our people." In the council chambers, emergency meetings spiraled into chaos. "This is an outrage," one ambassador shrieked. "They strike at civilians. There are children on Arrendor." "They starved our children first," Councillor Jarek snarled. "Now the wheel turns." The council speaker's voice was hollow. "We must call for negotiation, for ceasefire." "Fools," Jarek spat. "They don't want words anymore. We taught them war. Now they bring it." On Arrendor Prime, by nightfall, the human banner flew over the capital spaceport. Mercer stood amid the ruins, visor lifted, sweat streaking his face. His comm crackled. "Mercer," Dane's voice came through. "Report. City's down. Industry offline. Elite in full panic. Broadcasting full coverage as ordered." Dane's voice was ice. "Good. Tell your men. No mercy for collaborators. Hold position until the fleet moves." Mercer acknowledged grimly. In orbit, Admiral Keller watched Council reinforcements approaching on long-range scans. "Council fleet elements inbound," an officer reported. "Not enough to match us, but they'll try." Keller's mouth twisted in a thin smile. "Let them." He opened comms to Dane. "Council reinforcements en route. Orders?" "Engage," Dane replied. "No retreat, no prisoners." The second space battle above Arrendor was short and brutal. Council ships, hastily assembled, poorly coordinated, charged headlong into human guns. The Resolute led the counterstrike, tearing through Council cruisers with railgun volleys that shattered hulls in seconds. Council admirals screamed orders, but discipline had broken. Too many had seen the slaughter of the Pride fleet. Too many knew now. The humans fought with one goal: annihilation. When the last Council cruiser fled, the void above Arrendor belonged to humanity. On the ground, Council civilians, once arrogant rulers, cowered in basements and shelters, watching human troops patrol their shattered streets. Broadcasts streamed across every screen, images of the burning Council core world, footage of their elites in chains, cities crippled. And across the wider galaxy, panic spread. If Arrendor could fall, no world was safe. Back on the Resolute, Dane Holt stood before the senior staff. "Arrendor was the beginning," Dane said, voice hard. "Now we press harder. We force them to bleed, force them to fracture." Keller nodded. "Next target?" Dane brought up the map. "Kavros Station," he said. "Their largest shipyard. Destroy it. Show them their fleets are powerless." The officers saluted. The orders went out. The fleet jumped again. In the shadows of the council chamber, dissent began to grow. Some ambassadors demanded immediate surrender. Others screamed for full war mobilization, but cracks had already formed. Core worlds withdrew support. Border systems hesitated. The Great United Council was no longer united. And through it all, one truth echoed. The humans were not coming to negotiate. They were coming to destroy. The jump into the Kavros system was brutal. The human fleet dropped from slipspace into a storm of magnetic eddies and radiation clouds, the perfect natural fortress. But Kavros Station lay ahead, the Council's largest shipyard. A sprawling orbital complex the size of a small moon, ringed with dry docks and manufacturing arrays, a place that had birthed countless warships used to blockade human colonies. Now, it was time to burn it. Aboard the Resolute, Commander Dane Holt stood over the tactical display. Red icons filled the screen, automated defenses, heavy cruisers, support stations. Admiral Keller frowned. "Harder nut than Arrendor." Dane's voice was cold. "Good. Let them bleed defending it." He turned to the fleet communications officer. "Signal all ships. Attack pattern Omega. Full strike. No withdrawal." On Kavros Station, Council Admiral Rethok slammed a fist onto the console. "Humans, here. Impossible," an aide stammered. "Admiral, defense grids charging. Shipyards evacuating workers." "Too late," Rethok snarled. "All ships, hold the perimeter. We must not lose Kavros." But already, human missiles streaked toward the station, trails of plasma carving the void. The battle began in a storm of fire. Human destroyers swept in first, darting through defensive gaps, launching precision strikes. Council gun platforms responded with blinding bursts, but their targeting algorithms struggled to track human evasion patterns. Behind the destroyers came the main battle line. Cruisers and dreadnoughts unleashing hell. On the Resolute's bridge, Keller barked orders. "Concentrate fire on dry dock sectors 2 and 4. Target capital ship slips." Explosions rippled across Kavros Station. Docks shattered, half-completed warships torn apart before they could launch. Council ships scrambled to intercept, but cohesion was failing. The Council fleet, once proud, now fought fractured. After the defeats at Velos and Arrendor, distrust ran deep. Captains second-guessed orders. Some refused to commit fully. Others plotted retreat even as the battle raged. Rethok roared into comms, "Cowards! Fight or die!" But fear had taken root. Meanwhile, human Marines launched boarding pods toward the outer sectors of Kavros Station. At their head, Captain Jack Mercer, rifle locked and ready. In the cramped pod, his squad waited in tense silence. Mercer broke it. "Targets the command nexus. Cut their control, cripple the grid, move fast, hit harder." The Marines nodded grimly. They knew this was no surgical strike. This was destruction. The pod slammed into a maintenance airlock. Explosives cleared the breach. Mercer's team poured in, pulse rifles cutting down Council defenders in the flickering corridors. Resistance was fierce, but uncoordinated. Panic had spread even here. Mercer pushed forward, eyes cold. "For Vega," he muttered under his breath. Above, in orbit, the Resolute pressed the assault. Admiral Keller monitored the withering Council formation. "Secondary fleet moving to flank," an officer reported. "Let them," Keller said. "When they run, we kill them." On Kavros Station's command deck, Admiral Rethok's composure cracked. "Evacuate core staff," he snarled. But it was too late. Mercer's team breached the command sector, pulse fire ripping through the last defenders. Rethok drew a sidearm, a last act of defiance. Mercer shot him between the eyes without hesitation. With command lost, Kavros Station descended into chaos. Human charges detonated across the main power conduits, triggering cascading failures. Sections of the station tore apart in fiery bursts, fragments of half-built warships spinning into space. Watching from the Resolute, Dane Holt spoke softly. "End it." Keller gave the nod. The Resolute's main railgun charged, a thunderous hum filling the bridge. Moments later, a kinetic slug the size of a shuttle slammed into Kavros Station's central hub. The explosion lit the void, a miniature supernova. Kavros Station was no more. In the aftermath, the Council's shipbuilding capacity lay crippled. Messages poured into the Council chambers, panicked, furious. "Our fleets are dying. Our worlds stand unprotected. We must surrender. Sue for peace." But the Council fractured. Hardliners demanded retaliation. Moderates sought negotiation. Border systems threatened secession. The unity of the great galactic council, centuries old, shattered in days. In the shadows, Councillor Jarek watched the collapse with cold satisfaction. "They made them into monsters," he said softly. "Now they reap the storm." Aboard the Resolute, Keller and Dane Holt reviewed the battle reports. "Massive council defections," Keller noted. "Several sectors refusing to send reinforcements. Internal collapse accelerating." Dane's eyes were steel. "Good. Press the advantage. We don't give them time to recover." He pointed to the next target. "The Council Core. We break them politically next." Keller arched a brow. "You're planning to hit the capital?" Dane's voice was ice. "They called us savages. It's time to show them what real fear is." And across the galaxy, the message spread like wildfire. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. Now they were fighting to win, and there was no mercy left. The Council's inner sanctum, once the heart of galactic governance, now simmered with fear. The Grand Chamber, once filled with pomp and ceremony, had become a bunker. Armed guards lined the entrances. Hushed voices replaced proud speeches. The banners of unity hung limp in stale air. For the first time in centuries, the Council faced what it had never truly feared: defeat. Councillor Jarek strode through the tense chamber, his gaze sharp. Ambassadors argued in panicked tones. "They've destroyed Kavros," one shouted. "Our shipyards are gone. Our fleets can't match them," another cried. "We must negotiate." But the hardliners still gripped power. Councillor Merrick, a rotund, arrogant creature, slammed the table. "Surrender? Never. Humanity must be crushed." Jarek's lips curled in disgust. "They have already crushed us," he said coldly. "Your pride blinds you. Every day we delay, more worlds fall." Merrick sneered. "Coward." Jarek leaned in, voice low and sharp. "I watched your transports flee Arendor. You'll be the first to beg when they reach this chamber." The room fell silent. Outside the chamber, the Council's so-called unity unraveled. Border systems refused war levies. Core sectors hoarded ships to protect their own worlds. Civil war whispered on every channel. And through it all, human fleets advanced, methodical, relentless. Aboard the Resolute, Commander Dane Holt studied the latest intelligence. Council worlds were fracturing. Governors declared independence. Fleet captains abandoned the core. Admiral Keller entered the briefing room. "News from our spies. Factions forming in the Council. Some want surrender. Others plan to fight to the last." Dane's gaze darkened. "They won't be allowed to choose." He pointed to the holomap. "The Council capital. That's where we strike next. Hard, fast. We shatter what's left of their command." Keller nodded grimly. "The fleet's ready." Dane's voice was ice. "Then we move." But in the Council's shadows, desperate measures brewed. Councillor Merrick convened a secret meeting. Loyal hardliners, fanatical admirals. "They will come for us," Merrick hissed. "But we can strike first." He gestured to a shadowed figure, an assassin of the Obsidian Order, the Council's deadliest covert arm. "You have your target." The assassin bowed. "Commander Holt will not see another sunrise." On the Resolute, Dane Holt sensed the shift. Council assassins would come. He welcomed it, but he had other plans first. "Mercer," Dane said over comms. "Sir?" came Captain Jack Mercer's voice. "I need a surgical team ready. We're taking out their political heads." Mercer's tone sharpened. "Hit team locked and loaded. Just give the word." Dane's gaze hardened. "They want war in the shadows? We'll give it to them." Meanwhile, the assassin moved. Silent, deadly. Slipping aboard a refueling station near the Resolute's fleet anchor point, she prepared her strike. But human counterintelligence, sharpened by war, was watching. In a dim corridor, Mercer's team waited. Motion detectors pinged. "Target inbound," a trooper whispered. Mercer's voice was cold. "Alive if possible, dead if necessary." The assassin struck fast, but not fast enough. A stun round from Mercer's rifle dropped her in seconds. In the Resolute's brig, Dane Holt stared at the bound assassin. "Tell your masters," Dane said softly. "Their shadows are useless here." He turned to Mercer. "Dispose of her, then prepare the hit team. We strike the Council's heart next." Mercer saluted. In the Council chamber, chaos peaked. News of the failed assassination spread. Hardliners raged. Moderates panicked. Factions openly called for secession. Blaster fire echoed in the outer halls. Rival guards clashing. Civil war had begun. Councillor Jarek moved swiftly. He gathered loyalists, those who saw truth. "We must survive," Jarek said. "If we cannot hold this chamber, we flee, regroup, end this war with our minds, not with their blood." His allies nodded grimly, but already human scouts probed the outer defenses. "On the Resolute's bridge," Keller reported. "Council fleet in full disarray, inner defenses weak, their factions are turning on each other." Dane's voice was cold steel. "Perfect. We strike now, before they can rebuild." He keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, prepare for final advance. No hesitation, no surrender accepted." Across the galaxy, human fleets surged forward. The Council capital, once untouchable, now stood exposed. And the humans were coming, not for negotiation, not for peace, but for final victory. The human fleet's final approach was swift and merciless. From the bridge of the Resolute, Commander Dane Holt watched the shimmering blue orb of the Council capital grow larger in the viewport, Aurelia, seat of power for an empire now crumbling. For centuries, the capital world had been a symbol of unity and arrogance, a place where petty rulers dined on delicacies while human colonies starved beneath Council sanctions. Now, it would burn. Admiral Keller stood at Dane's side, reading off tactical reports. "Orbital defense is weak, fragmented control, no coordinated fleet response. Their civil war has gutted what's left of their command." Dane's jaw tightened. "Good. That makes it simple." He keyed the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, commence planetary assault. Drop teams deploy. No prisoners, no hesitation. We end this today." Across the void, the human war machine came alive, engines flaring, guns charging. The final phase of humanity's war had begun. On the surface of Aurelia, the once proud capital world trembled under the shadow of invasion. The Council's streets, wide avenues lined with marble towers and ornate monuments, now buzzed with panic. Factions of the Council's own guards fought each other in the plazas. Blaster fire echoed through the air. Civilians fled in terror. Councillor Jarek moved swiftly through the crumbling inner compound, his personal guard surrounding him. He barked orders to his aide. "Get me a secure channel to all surviving Council loyalists. We must consolidate before the humans breach the capital." But even as he spoke, the sky above darkened, human dropships descending in waves. It was too late. Captain Jack Mercer rode in the lead assault ship, rifle in hand, face grim beneath his combat helmet. His team of veterans stood ready, silent, focused. "This is it," Mercer told them. "We take their core. No half measures, no second chances. Commander Holt wants their leaders broken, in chains or dead." The dropship's retro thrusters fired. The floor shook beneath their boots. A green light flickered on. "Go," Mercer shouted. The ramp dropped. Human Marines stormed into the chaos of Aurelia's capital. Council defenders, a mix of elite guards, mercenaries, and desperate conscripts, threw up barricades across key choke points. But they faced a force hardened by years of brutal war. Mercer's squads moved like a scalpel, cutting through resistance with precision and ruthlessness. Heavy gunfire erupted along the Grand Promenade. Council snipers perched in towering spires were picked off by human sharpshooters. Grenades cleared fortified intersections. Civilians caught in the crossfire screamed and fled. There was no safe place left in the Council's heart. Inside the shattered Council chamber, Jarek slammed his fist on the table. "Where are our reinforcements?" An aide's voice trembled. "Gone, Counselor. The fleets have abandoned us. No one is coming." Jarek's gaze burned. "Then we fight here," he said. "If we fall with blood on our blades." Around him, a few remaining loyalists nodded grimly. Aboard the Resolute, Dane Holt watched the battle unfold on a massive tactical display. Red icons marked the scattered Council forces. Green marked the advancing human squads. The Council's perimeter collapsed in real time. Keller reported from his console. "Promenade sector under human control. Outer government complexes breached." Dane's voice was ice. "Good. Tell Mercer. Push to the central spire. I want the surviving counselors alive, to answer for everything they've done." In the wreckage of the Council's Grand Plaza, Mercer regrouped with his lead team. Smoke billowed from shattered towers. The air reeked of blood and scorched stone. Mercer keyed his comm. "Alpha teams, status?" "East wing secure. West wing still contested. Heavy resistance." "Push through," Mercer ordered. "We take the spire next. No delays." He turned to his second-in-command. "We breach in 5. Meanwhile, deep within the central spire, betrayal unfolded. Counselor Merrick, once the loudest hardliner, now sought survival. He activated a hidden channel. "To the human commander, I offer terms. Safe passage, access codes, in exchange for protection." A reply came, cold and sharp. "Terms rejected." Merrick's blood ran cold. Seconds later, an explosion rocked the chamber door. Human Marines stormed inside. Merrick reached for a blaster. Too slow. Mercer's shot dropped him in an instant. No mercy. No deals. On the upper levels, Jarek's loyalists made their final stand. Blaster fire filled the Grand Council Hall. Marble pillars shattered. Ancient banners burned. Jarek fought alongside his guards, rifle steady, eyes blazing. "For every colony they starved," he shouted. "For every voice they silenced." But numbers told the truth. Human squads advanced with grim precision, shields up, weapons blazing. One by one, Council defenders fell. At last, Mercer's squad breached the Council dais. Smoke and bodies littered the floor. At the center, Jarek stood alone, bloodied, weapon lowered. He looked Mercer in the eye. "So, it ends." Mercer's voice was cold steel. "On your knees." Jarek dropped his rifle. "For what it's worth," he said, voice steady. "You fight with honor." Mercer's gaze didn't waver. "Save your breath. You'll answer to Commander Holt." Minutes later, the battered counselors, Jarek among them, were marched in chains before the human command post. Dane Holt waited, arms crossed. His gaze burned as the prisoners were forced to kneel. "Counselor Jarek," Dane said, voice low and dangerous. "You'll answer for every crime committed against my people, every colony you starved, every child who died under your sanctions. Jarek met his gaze without flinching. And your people will answer for every civilian killed this day, he replied evenly. Dane's jaw tightened. This is war, and it ends when you break. He turned to Keller. Secure them. Prepare a transmission. I want every world in this galaxy to see their rulers fall. An hour later, the broadcast went live. Across the galaxy, every system tuned in. Council loyalist or rebel, civilian or soldier. On screen, the Council's shattered leaders, bound and kneeling before Dane Holt. His voice echoed across 1,000 worlds. For generations, your Council ruled through arrogance and oppression. You bled us dry, starved our colonies, murdered our people. He paused. No more. He gestured to the prisoners. Your rulers are broken, their fleets destroyed, their power ended. He leaned forward. To every world that still clings to the Council's lies, surrender or face the same fate. Across the stars, the message struck like a thunderbolt. Council worlds erupted in rebellion, fleets defected, governors fled. The empire that had ruled for centuries shattered in days. And the name whispered across the stars, in fear and awe alike, was human. In the command post, after the broadcast, Keller approached Dane. It's done, he said. Dane's gaze remained cold. No, he replied. Not yet. He stared out at the burning capital. Not until every last one of them knows. Humanity will never bow again. And in the void beyond, human fleets surged onward. There would be no turning back. 3 weeks after the fall of Aurelia, the galaxy was no longer the same. The Council's capital burned beneath a blackened sky. Its great towers, once gleaming symbols of power, lay in ruins. Smoke curled from shattered monuments. Bodies littered the plazas where arrogant ambassadors had once walked in silk and gold. The Council itself was dead, its leaders either executed or imprisoned. The Grand Chamber, where endless speeches had starved generations of human colonies, stood silent. And from its ashes, humanity had risen. Aboard the Resolute, Commander Dane Holt stood at the main viewport, watching new fleets gather. No longer just human ships, but vessels from defected Council worlds, border sectors now eager to pledge loyalty to the victors. The transmission from Aurelia's fall had shattered the old order. Across the galaxy, worlds rose in rebellion. Governors declared independence. Council loyalists fled into deep space, hunted like vermin, and everywhere the same message spread. Humanity rules now. Admiral Keller entered the bridge, a data slate in hand. Latest reports, he said. 73 Council sectors surrendered. 34 now openly aligned with us. He paused, voice grim. Some rogue factions still holding out. Militias, fanatics. Dane's eyes hardened. Then we crush them. No leniency. No rebuilding of this corrupt order. Keller nodded. The fleet is ready. In the prison levels of Aurelia's former central spire, Councillor Jarek sat in chains, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. Dane entered alone, the steel door slamming shut behind him. He stood before the fallen councillor, gaze cold. You led the machine that bled my people, Dane said. You deserve death. Jarek met his eyes. And yet here I sit, he replied, because you want them to see you as conqueror, not butcher. Dane leaned in. Don't mistake patience for mercy. You breathe because it serves my message, not my forgiveness. He straightened. Your execution will be public. Your death, a warning to every world still dreaming of restoring the Council. Jarek said nothing. There was nothing left to say. In the outer sectors, pockets of resistance flared, Council hardliners refusing to surrender. But they faced the full weight of humanity's war machine. Admiral Keller's fleets moved with ruthless speed, blockading worlds, bombarding holdouts. Captain Mercer led ground assaults, his Marines striking with precision. In one shattered sector, Mercer stood atop a ruined council fortress, comms crackling. "Commander Holt," he reported. "Resistance broken. No survivors." Dane's voice came through, cold as void. "Good. Move to the next target." There would be no peace until every last remnant was erased. Meanwhile, on Earth, a new order began to take shape. The Human Confederation, once a fractured alliance of desperate colonies, now stood unified. President Marcus Vane addressed a roaring assembly. "For too long, we were treated as lesser, starved, oppressed. No more!" He raised a clenched fist. "The galaxy will never again look down upon humanity." Thunderous cheers echoed. But in the shadows of the ruined council worlds, betrayal still brewed. A faction of surviving council admirals plotted in secret, desperate, cornered. One among them, Admiral Kethrin, reached out to mercenaries, pirates, even rogue human elements. A last, desperate strike was planned, an assassination attempt on Commander Holt himself. If they could cut off the human spearhead, perhaps the war could turn. Back aboard the Resolute, Dane sensed the coming storm. "Security reports chatter," Keller warned. "An attempt is coming. They're desperate." Dane's gaze was steel. "Let them come. I welcome the cowards." He prepared his inner circle, trusted guards, battle-hardened veterans. Captain Mercer himself took personal command of Dane's protection team. "They won't get close," Mercer promised. The attempt came during a public ceremony, the formal signing of surrender by defected council governors. The plaza swelled with soldiers, civilians, and former council officials. Cameras broadcast the event to the entire galaxy, and beneath the fanfare, killers waited. As Dane approached the dais, a lone figure moved through the crowd, disguised as a technician. A concealed pulse blade gleamed. The assassin lunged, but Mercer moved first, a single shot dropping the attacker mid-strike. Gunfire erupted as hidden gunmen opened fire from the balconies. Chaos consumed the plaza. But humanity's veterans responded with brutal efficiency. Mercer's Marines cut down the attackers in seconds. Bodies littered the stones, and at the center, unshaken, Dane Holt stood beneath the human banner. He raised a blood-streaked fist. "They cannot stop what we have begun." Cheers roared from the soldiers below. Later, in a secure chamber, Keller stood with Dane. "The last of their knives are broken," Keller said. "The galaxy is ours." Dane's voice was quiet, but hard. "Not yet." He gazed at the star map, worlds still marked in red. "We finish what we started. Total surrender. Total disarmament. The Council's memory must be erased." Keller nodded. "Orders will be given." Over the following months, humanity's forces swept the stars. Every loyalist stronghold fell. Council artifacts were destroyed, their archives erased, statues torn down, history rewritten. Humanity had not just won a war, it had reshaped the galaxy itself. And in the heart of Aurelia, beneath the ashes of the old regime, Dane Holt stood on the Grand Plaza. A new monument rose, not to the Council, but to the fallen of Vega Prime, to the colonists who had starved under Council blockade, to the innocents who had died for the greed of alien rulers. Dane placed a hand on the cold stone. "For them," he whispered. Later, in his private chambers, Dane met with Keller and Mercer. "The galaxy is quiet," Keller reported. "No fleets remain. No resistance." Mercer added, "Even the black markets now serve us." "The old order is gone." Dane looked at them both. "And now?" Mercer asked. Dane's gaze burned. "Now we build." He stood. "We will never forget what they did to us. Never again will humanity beg. Never again will we bow." He faced the stars. And if they rise against us once more, we will remind them why the Council fell. Across the galaxy, the message was clear. Humanity ruled, not with mercy, but with power. And in every dark corner of space, those who once called humans lesser now spoke their name with fear. Because when humans chose war over words, they never stopped.